I studied fine art in context in Bristol, and the context element really influenced my practice then and to date. And for me, the interest was in the way in which you consider site, context and audience. So who are you making artwork for? Who's going to consume it? Who's going to engage in it? At university in Bristol, I was making work that was very politically charged and very politically loaded, but it didn't have a sense of humour. And what I found is people were really engaging with it because there was almost a need, an appetite for work that was engaging with political issues. I really enjoyed making the work, but I felt that it needed that kind of lightness of touch, not to in any way create a frivolous comment on what was happening, but to be able to look at something so loaded in a very different way and to engage audiences in a very different way. In 2005, I was commissioned by Bookworks to make a book that explored the Muslim vernacular. I decided to look at humour in its very simplest form and start to write jokes. So Shake and Vac is a joke book, and they're jokes that explore loosely the Muslim vernacular. So it's a series of relatively badly written jokes, not all hysterical, but it was about me really thinking about humour and actually about how jokes become about that moment of exchange. So out of Shake and Vac, I started to do stand-up comedy routines. And for me, the stand-up comedy routine was about taking work outside of a gallery space. And I was really enjoying that relationship between me and the audience and the laughter that was being produced. But for me, the laughter was always a point of entry for them to be thinking about the politics behind what I was making jokes about, the issues of stereotypes and what was happening, particularly then in the Middle East. The main issue for me was that it was very much me talking to an audience and an audience laughing, but there wasn't an active participation. And for me, the pub quiz was a moment of glory almost, the idea that I found a format in which I could use this humour and actively engage an audience. How can we actively engage participants into the making of the work so the viewer becomes somebody that completes the work?
Which kind of bird of prey, was captured in Sudan after officials believed it was carrying out surveillance for the Israeli Secret Service? So which kind of bird of prey was captured in Sudan after officials believed it was carrying out surveillance for the Israeli Secret Service? Now, if you don't know, you can take a guess. Just think of your birds of prey and take a guess. As points do mean prizes in tonight's quiz.
One of the reasons that I was really passionate about making art that was accessible and using accessible formats was that I think a lot of contemporary art has a language somehow that doesn't engage an audience. There's a formality to it, or almost a language that an audience believe they need to understand to be able to engage with artworks. I'm interested in how we can make work that doesn't make people feel intimidated, but engages people, draws people in and asks them to participate. So a lot of my work is very much focused on the idea of knowledge production, how we know what we know, and do we know what we know, and how we've come to acquire that information. A lot of the time we acquire the majority of our information through education and also through the media and through avenues that we're not even aware of, through quizzes on TV, through information that you might pick up in a trivia book. So without realising that's information that's being passed down to you but has a very specific worldview. So even if you're taking part in a quiz, or if you think about what you're being taught in a history lesson, what is the information that you're being given? What information is being told to you on the media, and how do we playfully disrupt that? So I was really interested in using very obvious mechanisms to do that. So for example, my quizzes, my universality challenge, and a piece of work called A Rather Trivial Pursuit. They're all the same body of work in the sense that they're using a direct question and answer format to ask people to literally try to answer the questions that I'm asking them. And by doing that, I'm asking them to disrupt what they presume to know or disrupt what they think they might know as a correct answer and re-question that. So I've created a word search that's going to be in a free local newspaper that is created out of a series of workshops with local participants, so members of the community. The idea of me using a word search is that it's a very accessible, again, very recognisable pastime. It's something that people can actively engage in. It's about shifting the general content of what's found in a word search and making it a set of playful words that can offer a critique or a playful view of a certain area. A new series of work is called Public Address, in which I'm interested in using a tannoy system and public address systems that exist in the fabric of buildings or outdoor spaces, and to subvert the content that's being passed through those public address systems. So public address systems are almost invisible. People don't notice them, but they often don't realise the way in which they are controlling a situation. They're directing people, they're moving people, or they're commanding people to do certain things. So for this exhibition, I've created a piece of work which is called Where Are You Originally From? Answer, Britain. And it's a series of statements similar to ones that I've encountered throughout my life, along the lines of where are you from, where are you originally from, where is your heritage, where are you really from? What people are doing is they are making subtle judgments about people. And while it is an inlet for looking for common ground to find out how I know you and how I can relate to where you're from, what it also does is it always makes that person feel like an outsider. Again, I'm talking about from my experience, and the continued question of, do you celebrate Christmas? Or something as simple and very open as that. It just reminds me that I'm being viewed as different from you. Women from the Midlands are so exotic. Oh, I went to Hull last year on holiday. It's beautiful. Nottingham has a certain je ne sais quoi. So the current situation is a major new commission for me. It's reappropriating buzzwire, which is a very recognisable and common game. So it's utilising, again, a format that is about active participation. In the current situation, the world map has been reduced to almost the bare minimum. It's the outlines. And in a sense, this stainless steel tubing is creating a very physical presence to an ephemeral idea, this notion of borders and boundaries that are constantly changing. There's a physical sensation that people feel when they're actually taking part in the game. And for me, it's really important that people have this physical sensation. So again, they're rethinking about the power of borders and what borders mean. On a very basic level, they're just playing a game. They're trying to navigate from one side of the world to another. They're trying to get to Syria, to Sweden, without the need of a Schengen visa. But really, what else is happening there? They're thinking about the physical effect that crossing a border has. And it's a very serious issue. It's not that I'm trying to make light of a serious issue, but I'm using play as an entry point to engage people into re-questioning the division of land. If you look at geography and the way in which land has been divided, you start to think about the micro level, the way in which if you look at a map of Africa 100 years ago, Sudan occupied a majority of North Africa, but over the 100 years, the divisions that have happened have actually created communities that have been separated, people's lives that have been divided from other members of their community. Their identities have changed. They've changed from being Sudanese to being Congolese. What effect has that had on a micro level? All of the disputed borders that aren't currently visible on a world political map, such as Western Sahara or the Turkish Cypriot border, I've put them and created them out of the same material as all of the other borders, because for me it was very much a a conscious decision to give them as much importance as the ones that have been decided to be marked on a map, because people are dying and fighting over these certain contested borders, and they have as much relevance and as much power as the ones that are visible. For the end of series, I was interested in literally deconstructing really grand narratives or really large ideas and reducing them into a simple deconstructed idea. So for the end of series that I've produced for this exhibition, I've created 4 bodies of work that relate directly, for me, to the current situation. There are 4 works: The End of Empire, The End of the World, The End of Agreement, and The End of Tintin's Adventures in the Land of Black Gold. So I was really interested in the play between these 4 titles and between the literal deconstruction of these works. So The End of Empire is the deconstructed book by Hart and Negre, which talks about the state of empire. I was interested in the idea of literally taking this grand narrative, this theory, and these theoreticians talking about empire and reducing it to a mound of confetti. And by literally deconstructing it, asking the audience to deconstruct, to take apart, to think about the ideas of empire and what empire might mean. The End of the World is, again, a very playful idea of a statement that we all talk about, the end of the world. And it's the deconstruction of a world political map reduced to the very essence. So by destroying a map, we're talking about cartography and map making, and how, again, the act of cartography is marking and demarcating the world in the way we know it. What is the history of map making? It's a very political, very charged history. So for The End of Agreement, I wanted to deconstruct the notion, deconstruct literally the Sykes-Picot Agreement that was drafted 100 years ago between Britain, France and Russia over the division of the Middle East. So how that particular agreement has a direct effect on the current situation. And also how, if you look now at the relevance, again, of how Britain, France and Russia are so present in Syria and the Middle East at the moment, and you see that 100 years on, the same superpowers still have the same presence and have given themselves the same right, the same legal rights to control and to divide and to conquer. So the final work is the end of the adventures of Tintin in the Land of Black Gold. And Tintin, for me, is very much about the epitome of the Oriental gaze and how the West is a saviour of the East. And the way in which stereotypes are created and accepted through these comic art forms, and how a young audience and older audiences consume these images and these stereotypes, and how again, I'm asking people to, by taking part in deconstructing almost this stereotypical view, this gaze, how I'm asking them to relook at it and rethink about the effect that Tintin may have had on the way in which people consider or think about the Middle East or all of the other areas that Tintin decided to go. The 5 pieces of work in this current exhibition are quite diverse in the modes in which they're realised, but they're all tied together with a common theme, which is I'm really interested in looking at the here and the now and looking at political situations and issues that are current. So literally the current situation. So for me, there's a sense of playfulness and a sense of humour and a sense of participation that is echoed through all of the works, and how they use popular culture to look at how we see the world and how we know what we know.